Hello and welcome everyone to this episode of Numerology Quick Takes. This week we're going to take a look at the week of April 7th and the energy that we'll be working with, which is the 15-6. This is a really unique kind of energy, very nuanced, because it really highlights two sides of the coin. With this energy and this cycle, we're looking at the vibration of the 6, which is truth, love, honesty at its highest vibration. But in order to get to that higher vibration of truth, love, honesty, we have to move through the shadows. We have to move through the opposite of what love truly is, or what the opposite of what truth truly is, or honesty. And it really kind of forces us when we move through this kind of cycle to look at our own human behavior and how that personal human behavior affects our relationships and our experiences. And it helps us to see the adjustments that we ourselves can make in order to get better results, in order to have a healthier connection, a healthier experience. But that takes work, and that takes a shift sometimes in perspective in what our role is in that process. So where the 6 is the vibration of love, truth, and honesty, the 15, when it's in a cycle, can showcase where it is that we are keeping ourselves stuck. We're creating barriers to our own evolution, or our own moving forward, our own momentum through our actions, through our perspectives, through our beliefs, through our values, etc. And through our actions as well, right? And so when we have the 15-6 in a cycle, a lot of times it can feel really uncomfortable because it's highlighting and showcasing for us where it is that we need to make some changes, like where we need to see things a little bit differently and present and engage a little bit differently in order to see different results. So the 15 can absolutely highlight where it is that we tend to have high or unrealistic expectations or conditions for ourselves, for others, for a circumstance, and where it is that those unrealistic expectations actually create a lot of destruction within, again, our relationships, our experiences, our circumstances. So this week, wherever it is that we have those high expectations, we could see the bubble break. We could see it burst at this time. And that bursting could bring some kind of greater awareness to where it is that those expectations are, first of all, not being met, and having us take a closer look at why they're not being met, right? Or those conditions. Because remember, the 6 is the vibration of love, like unconditional love. The 15 is the vibration of conditional love. And so when we're in a cycle like this, there's kind of like this tug of war between the two. And the goal of that is to show us where it is that we are showing up to basically relationships, love, etc., with a tremendous amount of conditions and expectations that aren't realistic, that can't be met, or that could possibly be met in the future, but that's not where we're at right now. And so by the bubble being burst, we're seeing that person or that circumstance is not meeting our expectation or our condition. And it's in how we choose to deal with that and manage that that ultimately makes the difference. So in other words, if we have some kind of expectation or condition for our love for another person. Let's just use that as an example. And they repeatedly are unable to meet us there. Repeatedly, they can't show up in the way that we expect them to show up. They can't show love the way we expect them to show love, etc., etc. This week, we could be very much dialed into that and seeing it. And we can either see it as a problem and blame the other person and say, well, you're not meeting me here. This is your work to do. And I can almost guarantee that what that will create is some kind of divide, that will create some kind of resentment, and it will eventually start to deteriorate that connection. If those expectations are continually put on the other person that they're not able to meet for whatever reason, and if we continuously blame the other person for not being able to meet those expectations, right? This is a lesson, this is a life lesson this week in how to first recognize when we're putting expectations on others and ourselves that we cannot possibly or they cannot possibly meet in this moment, right? And it can show us where we are not meeting that person where they're currently at. We're seeing their potential. We're seeing, what we want to see in that person or that experience. We're projecting onto that person what we feel we need from that person. And we're expecting that person to show up in that way to meet us there and to offer us that. And if they are not there yet, like if they're not capable of doing that, or if they don't want to do that, then when we blame that person, we are, again, deteriorating that connection from our own actions. It really has nothing to do with the other person because we're not seeing that person for who they are in this moment. We're not seeing that person for what they need in this moment. We're not present with that person or that circumstance, right? It could also come in as with your job or really anything. Or again, your own relationship with yourself. If you have these high expectations of yourself, by like the end of the month, I want to lose 50 pounds. And then at the end of the month, you haven't lost 50 pounds. What are you going to do? You're going to blame yourself. You're going to beat yourself up for not doing everything you could have possibly done to lose 50 pounds, to meet some ridiculous standard, to meet some ridiculous expectation. Right? And that beating yourself up is not helping the situation. It's actually deteriorating the situation. So next month, you're going to be even harder on yourself and push even harder and actually end up hurting yourself in the process. Right? So when we are focused only on the expectation or the condition, then we are setting the stage for disappointment pretty much every time. And I'm talking about like unrealistic expectations, right? Is it healthy to have expectations? I think so, right? That's, it's healthy to have goals. It's healthy to have, an expectation of what it is that you want to achieve or what you hope the other person will achieve. Or what you expect or hope that the situation will bring for you, right? Sometimes that's how we make decisions in life. But it's when we get into that uncharted territory of extreme expectations or conditions or unrealistic expectations or conditions that we end up creating more discord, more destruction within those situations. So this week is a really good opportunity, or could be a really good opportunity, to see where it is that we have these more extreme expectations or conditions and how we respond to that when the other person or the circumstance is unable to meet us there. And again, when this happens, when we're shown that the expectation is not being met, if we respond by blaming the other person and pushing them to do better, then we are essentially the problem in that situation. Because ultimately, we are not seeing that person for who they are in this moment. We are not present enough to recognize who they are now, who they are in this moment, what they bring to the table, their desires, their wants, etc. We are too focused on our own needs within that situation and projecting on those expectations that likely that person doesn't have the tools or doesn't want or isn't capable of reaching. And that's okay. That's not their problem. This is an opportunity for us to learn to manage those expectations more appropriately, to manage those conditions more appropriately. A lot of times what we end up doing when it comes to really anything, a lot of times where there are expectations or conditions in place, what we end up doing is seeing the potential of that situation or of that person, right? Seeing the highest possible potential of that situation or that person, which can be beautiful in a lot of ways, because you can end up seeing a person's strengths that way or a situation's strengths that way or whatever, or the positives. But what it does is it overrides where that person or that circumstances is in reality, like in this moment. And they can try to live up to that, but they're always going to fall short. Because usually what happens is like once someone meets our expectation or expectations, then we create more, right? And people would say, oh, but that helps people, to grow and pushes people to be the best that they can be. But you can help someone to grow and support someone in that growth without pushing them beyond their current means, right? Without pushing them beyond where they're at in this moment. It's their journey. It's their job to want to progress in the way that feels right for them, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a lot talking about expectations and conditions, but it's something that we all do, right? Like we often end up seeing the potential of a situation or a person, and that's where we put our focus. But we end up getting very disappointed when that person doesn't continue to present that way or doesn't present that way. When the sort of rose-colored glasses come off and we see like, okay, I've just been creating this story about this person, but it's not actually accurate. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with the person, just like there's nothing wrong with us. When we set those expectations of, I want to lose 50 pounds this month, we are setting ourselves up for failure, not success. And then when we're not able to do that, that doesn't mean there's something wrong with us, right? There's something wrong with our perception, right? Like that we thought that we could lose 50 pounds this month. I mean, you could maybe do that, but you're not going to do it in a healthy way or a sustainable way. So my point is, and there's a great saying that is so true. It's the higher the expectation, the harder you fall, like the longer the fall, right? The greater the fall. And it's so true. So this week is a great opportunity to recognize where it is that we have those expectations and then manage them, work on them. If the bubble bursts this week, it's not to give us permission to blame the other person, take it out on the other person. It's an opportunity to look within and see where it is that we've been putting these expectations on others, where it is that we've been putting these expectations on ourselves that are unrealistic and that are actually doing more destruction than construction, right? They're more destructive than constructive. And it's an opportunity for us to pivot and to try to do better. And the easiest way to do that is to bring it back to the present moment, to see the reality of the situation, to see the actual person for who they are in this moment, to meet them there, to meet them where they are at, just like we would want them to meet us where we are currently at. Because nothing deteriorates a relationship quicker than expectations. And you know how it feels when someone has very unrealistic expectations of you. You start to try to morph who you are and fit in that mold and to meet those expectations. But if they're not realistic for where you're at on your journey at this moment, you're never going to hit that bar. And that bar is just going to continue to rise and rise and rise and rise and rise. So it's like this unattainable, journey that you're putting yourself on. So not only is this an opportunity this week to look at where we put those expectations on others, it's an opportunity to look at that for ourselves as well. Any situation where we're like, I'll be happy when I'm a millionaire. I'll be happy when I lose 10 pounds. I'll let myself enjoy the finer things in life when I hit this goal, blah, 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 right? I'll put myself out there when I feel more attractive, whatever it is that we say to ourselves, whatever expectation we put on ourselves. This week is an opportunity to see where we do that and to start the journey of rectification, start the journey of managing those expectations and conditions, right? Because we're not going to stop seeing the potential. We're not going to stop seeing the potential in others, in ourselves, etc. But we have to also have grace and patience for ourselves and others and recognize where it is that we are at on our journey, to have grace for that and appreciation for that, and to recognize that we may hit that potential. We may hit those expectations, but it may not be today, and that's okay. And also with our relationships, when we can manage those expectations and bring it back to the present moment and truly meet that person where they are at, we might see that maybe we're not compatible. Maybe it's not the relationship of our dreams. And maybe there needs to be a different course of action within that relationship. And that's okay, right? Because you can go separate ways in a healthy way. Whereas if you stay together to try to force that person to meet those expectations, you're just constantly going to be disappointed. And so is that other person. So it really is this week an opportunity to move more towards that higher vibration of truth, love, and honesty with self, with others, with our circumstances. Bring it back to the present and be very realistic about what's actually happening. Who that person is, who they're actually presenting as, not be hyper-focused on who we want them to be, and then blame them when they're not able to show up in that way. So a lot of inner work this week is very possible. And yeah, could be interesting too on the global stage, because I think a lot of bubbles could also be burst in sort of maybe like if we're putting people on pedestals, we might have some disappointment to move through this week with that. And again, it's not only like how we choose to sort of what modifications we choose to make, it's how we choose to manage it, right? So interesting energies. Also, when we bring it back to the present and we're not so focused on the future or again, the potential or whatever it may be, there's a sense of surrender to that. And that surrendering in the present moment can absolutely bring a tremendous amount of freedom. Like imagine if you, instead of saying, I'm going to lose 50 pounds this week, instead of saying I'm going to lose 50 pounds this month, set realistic goals, but give yourself grace and permission to not meet those expectations. You can always try again. You can always, let it show you where some modifications need to be made in a healthy way, in a compassionate way, in an understanding way. So yeah, I think you'll find, and we continue to learn this as we move through life, right? But we often find that when we manage our expectations, when we are present, we are more free. So, yeah, very interesting energies this week, but a beautiful opportunity to create healthier connections and relationships with ourselves and with others through this simple act. It's something that, it's not so simple actually. because we have emotions, right? And we have a mind that often tends to go down the rabbit holes, and we have an ego and all of these things. But this is an opportunity to not only learn about ourselves and how to, again, approach life and relationships and circumstances in a healthier way, but to truly build healthy connections with people in real time, meaning we're meeting people where they're at and making decisions from that place as opposed to a place that's riddled with expectations and conditions. So, yeah. Just a beautiful reminder that if we are expecting someone to show up in a certain way and they're not able to do it, and we blame that person for not being able to do it, it's not their work to do, it's ours. It's our work. So yeah, we could get a lot of homework this week, depending on how we're showing up to situations. And most people in some situation, I mean, I would say almost everybody in some situation shows up with expectations and conditions, like extremes, right? So this is a great week to kind of work on that and to see where that is. And when we can do that, we will be free from that. So, and surrender to what life wants to bring in and work with that as it comes in. You still set your goals, still set your all those sort of things, right? Of course. But just be mindful of those more unrealistic expectations. So, I hope it's a great one. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.